A man smiles softly and asks for a small favor. You say yes, it seems harmless, but the next week he asks again and again. When you finally say no, his face falls, hurt and disappointment flicker in his eyes, and suddenly you feel guilty. But why? Because you've just been manipulated, not by force, but by vulnerability. You see, throughout history, many have studied power, not just how people rise with strength, but how some subtly bend others without ever showing force. The most dangerous manipulators aren't the ones who shout or dominate. They're those who appear fragile, harmless, even broken. They never confront you head-on. They don't argue or demand. They seem incapable of causing pain, yet somehow you do exactly what they want. You make room for them. You feel terrible refusing them. You give in, not because you're forced, but because you've been made to believe you must. This is a quiet form of control, a psychological game played by those who weaponize weakness. Many assume manipulation comes from aggression, loud voices, pressing demands, but real manipulation often wears the mask of helplessness. Tears are shed at just the right moment, wounds are shown exactly when boundaries are set, and stories of abandonment and loneliness are told to keep you tethered. Slowly, your mind rewires itself. You think, if I say no, it'll break them. They have no one else. I must help. That's not kindness. That's a trap. The manipulator's power lies not in their strength, but in how deeply they can entangle your compassion. This kind of manipulation is silent but deadly. They won't accuse or command. Instead, they'll withdraw, grow cold, or sulk. You chase after them, trying to understand what you did wrong, apologizing, changing your behavior. Not because it's logical, but because emotional pressure forces you. Your role shifts from friend or helper to emotional captive. They master the art of turning your empathy into chains, your patience into obligations, and your loyalty into a leash. And the cruelest part, they don't have to raise their voice to win. The weak manipulator thrives on your guilt. They make you feel responsible for their pain. When you say no, they don't argue. They become quiet, distant, almost broken. You feel like the villain, as if your refusal is a personal betrayal. But this guilt is a weapon wrapped in vulnerability. Fear makes you alert. Pity makes you lower your guard. Pity is more dangerous because it blinds you. You believe you're the one helping, but in truth, you're being harvested for emotional energy. Beware those who speak of their weakness more than their ambitions, for often their helplessness masks refusal to grow or take responsibility. They depend on others to carry burdens they won't lift themselves. The world loves an underdog, but sometimes that underdog is a predator cloaked in fragility. The more capable and dependable you are, the more likely you are to become their target. Your unwillingness to say no, your fear of seeming harsh, your desire to fix things, they all become tools for control. They cry, they complain, they make you feel chosen, like helping them is a sign of your nobility. But it's not nobility, it's a cage. If you try to break free, they act betrayed, wounded, abandoned. They don't explode in anger, they leak toxicity. Forgetting to reply, canceling plans, making passive-aggressive remarks that sting just enough. You start questioning yourself, wondering if you're the one at fault, changing your behavior to avoid their moods, giving them control without realizing it. The manipulator's tactics are surgical, not clumsy. Every subtle jab, every silent treatment, every veiled criticism is designed to make you doubt, adjust, and accommodate. They punish your boundaries without admitting it, withdrawing warmth and creating distance, all while pretending they're not upset. They want you confused, explaining yourself, trying harder to fix something that's never truly broken. You become their emotional servant, the person who smooths their rough edges, absorbs their pain and carries their burdens, never questioning if the relationship is healthy. They make you believe their survival depends on your obedience, but that survival is an illusion, a victory built on your sacrifice. Manipulation disguised as helplessness is a masterstroke of psychological warfare. The manipulator doesn't need to demand or threaten. They only need to appear vulnerable enough to make you lower your defenses. They use your strengths against you. Your loyalty becomes their security, your empathy their crutch, your patience their entitlement. They compliment you not because they admire your virtues, but to train you to keep giving. "You're the only one who understands me," they say. "No one else is like you. It feels good." Until the stakes rise. When you hesitate, they remind you, "I thought you were different. I guess I was wrong." Their praise was a leash, their admiration a false identity. You're forced to perform to maintain their illusion. Your compassion is twisted into obligation. Your reliability becomes expectation. Your boundaries betrayal. When you stop playing their role, they act wounded and abandoned, but never because you did anything wrong, because you stopped being their emotional caretaker. They don't confront you with anger, they slowly drain you with passive aggression and silence, making you question your own feelings and sanity. This quiet erosion is the most dangerous manipulation because it's invisible to everyone else, and by the time you notice, it's deeply embedded. Recognize this pattern early. Someone who never owns their faults, always needs help, turns your refusals into emotional rejections, demands urgent attention but never reciprocates. Someone who blames everyone but themselves, remembers every favor you refused but forgets every kindness you showed. Someone whose gratitude always comes with strings and whose appreciation quickly turns to expectation. Manipulators rely on your explanations, your reasons for needing space, your justifications for saying no. Every explanation you offer becomes ammunition for their guilt. "You said you were busy, but I saw you had time for others." "You say you need space, but you don't need it from everyone." The more you explain, the more they twist your words to trap you. The secret is to stop explaining. Enforce your boundaries with silence. You don't owe anyone a justification for protecting your well-being. Guilt is their weapon. Emotional indifference is your shield. When they say, "I guess I just don't matter to you anymore," don't flinch. Don't reassure, let the silence speak. This silence is not coldness, it's clarity. It teaches them you cannot be controlled by guilt or manipulation. You refuse to trade your self-respect for temporary peace. You are not cruel, you are firm. You're retraining them, teaching what works and what doesn't. Emotional manipulation fails when it meets unwavering boundaries. When they try to flip the narrative, claiming you never make time for them, don't argue or defend yourself. Ask calmly, "Why do you think I should?" Watch as they scramble to justify their demands, reveal their entitlement, or fall silent because they have no real case. This is flipping the power dynamic. You no longer explain, you make them explain. Most manipulators have never been challenged to justify their expectations. They rely on automatic guilt. When you flip the script, you break the cycle. You stop being their emotional safety net, their unpaid therapist, their punching bag. You disengage, let the silence linger, let the confusion grow, let them feel life without your compliance. This is non-verbal domination. Sometimes stepping back teaches more than confrontation. Manipulators feed on empathy, your need to fix things, your fear of seeming heartless. When you stop reacting, their confidence shatters. Suddenly they wonder, did I go too far? Was I unfair? Are they really done? Let them spiral. This is not revenge. It's balance. It's the consequence of their behavior. But don't return. Don't reconnect to explain or negotiate. Once you remove your energy, keep it removed. Returning teaches them manipulation works. Just wait longer. No second chances, no hope for wear down. Leave without drama, without apology, without performance. Leave cold, clear, finished. Distance is your final message. This exit makes them understand it was never about emotional connection, it was control. You lost a puppet, you became free. This is about reputation. You teach others how to treat you by what you accept and what you refuse. Read now on, guilt meets silence, passive aggression meets space, emotional traps meet unbreakable boundaries. Manipulation fails quietly and completely. You protect your energy not by walls, but by becoming unreachable to manipulation. In a room full of noise, you sit silently, unmoved, hearing but not reacting. Others try and fail to control you. They have no frame to bend. They have no buttons to push. When your presence bends to no one, people adjust even if they don't understand why. Your emotions are your own. Your confidence doesn't depend on others' approval. Your decisions are steady, not swayed by judgment or disappointment. You don't owe anyone an emotional performance. You don't reward guilt with attention. You don't explain yourself to weak minds. You become rare, untouchable. No one can use guilt on someone who doesn't flinch. No one can bait someone who doesn't chase approval. No one can manipulate someone who needs nothing from them. Your silence becomes a boundary, a message, a judgment. Manipulators disappear because they can't win. The insecure shrink because your energy is disciplined. The strong rise because they recognize real power. You are no longer explaining boundaries. You are the boundary. You walk the world not trying to protect peace, but peace that protects itself. Everyone learns. Try to control me, you lose me. Weaponize weakness, you'll feel my absence. Approach me as a victim, you'll be ignored. True freedom emerges not from fighting others, but from mastering yourself. When you realize that no external force holds your peace unless you allow it, you begin to reclaim control over your own mind and emotions. Manipulation thrives in chaos, confusion, and self-doubt, but clarity and self-awareness act like armor. Once you see the games clearly, the shadows shrink, and the so-called weak manipulator loses their grip. They rely on your confusion, your blurred lines between empathy and obligation. But when your heart and mind are aligned, when you know your worth and limits, their tactics become visible, powerless, and absurd. This mastery is not something gifted overnight. It is cultivated slowly through reflection, practice, and the willingness to endure discomfort. Saying no may cause temporary pain or conflict, but it births resilience. The discomfort you feel when breaking a manipulator's hold is the first sign of your awakening. It is the crack in the old pattern, the beginning of a new narrative where you are the author, not the victim. Every time you resist guilt, every time you refuse to explain or justify your boundaries, you build a muscle of freedom stronger than any external pressure. People will always try to shape you into what they want, whether out of selfishness, fear, or neediness. Your responsibility is to hold your ground, not for their approval, but for your survival. If you lose yourself to please others, you trade authenticity for illusion. That trade is costly. Emotional bankruptcy, loss of identity, and a sense of emptiness that no one else can fill. Manipulators exploit this emptiness, feeding on your desire to belong, to be loved, to be needed. They do not fill the void, they widen it. The paradox is that true connection requires boundaries. It is not walls that isolate, but walls that protect. Healthy boundaries create the space where genuine relationships thrive. Not the ones built on guilt, obligation, or emotional blackmail. When you hold your boundaries firmly, others either learn to respect you or reveal themselves as manipulators unworthy of your time. This process is painful but liberating. It clears the weeds to allow real growth. Manipulation is often cloaked in words of love and care. The phrase, "I'm only trying to help," can be a weapon. The most subtle form of manipulation is the illusion of concern. It binds you emotionally, disguising control as kindness. When someone insists they are your only friend or the only one who cares, they are not offering love, they are claiming territory. Their help comes with strings attached. It is conditional, transactional, and designed to keep you tethered. The manipulator counts on your loyalty, your fear of loneliness, and your hope for change. They tell stories of past suffering, broken promises from others, and the pain of abandonment. These stories are not just confessions. They are chains wrapped around your heart. You become the savior, the rescuer, the only one who can prevent tragedy. But you must remember, your role is not to carry someone else's emotional baggage forever. Rescue without reciprocity is enabling. It feeds the problem instead of solving it. True help means empowering others to stand on their own, not turning their weakness into your lifelong responsibility. When you make yourself indispensable in someone's emotional life, you trap yourself in a toxic cycle. They grow dependent, you grow resentful. Love and care become obligations and debts. The relationship loses its soul and becomes a burden. You must learn to differentiate between genuine need and emotional manipulation. Genuine need seeks support but respects limits. It does not punish refusal or weaponize vulnerability. Manipulation, on the other hand, always demands more than you can give and makes you feel guilty for withholding. It uses your empathy as currency, trading on your kindness until there is nothing left to give. Learning this distinction is one of the hardest lessons, because it requires you to face your own blind spots. You must acknowledge your desire to fix, to be needed, and to avoid conflict, even when it harms you. It requires courage to admit you have been manipulated, and strength to walk away. It requires patience to rebuild your self-trust, and to stop seeking validation from those who only take. But the reward is immense. When you break free, you experience an inner peace that no external circumstance can shake. You learn to trust your feelings as signals, not chains. You develop emotional intelligence that allows you to see through deceit without hatred or fear. You cultivate compassion that does not mean sacrifice, but balance. You become a lighthouse, steady and unwavering, guiding yourself and others through storms without being pulled under. This journey is deeply personal, but universally relevant. Everyone encounters manipulation at some point, whether from family, friends, colleagues, or strangers. Recognizing it is the first step. Refusing to be its victim is the next. But mastery means moving beyond defense to create a life rooted in clarity, respect, and authentic connection. The power of emotional manipulation is rooted in its invisibility. It is not physical force but psychological subtlety that entangles minds and hearts. This subtlety makes it difficult to identify and even harder to escape. Victims often feel isolated, confused, and trapped by emotions that seem irrational but are intensely real. Their world shrinks to the manipulator's needs, and their own desires fade into the background. Healing begins by reclaiming your narrative. You must rewrite the story you tell yourself about why you feel guilty, responsible, or weak. You must refuse the role of victim and take up the mantle of survivor. This transformation requires honesty about your own patterns, your boundaries, and your worth. It also requires support, finding allies who respect your limits and encourage your growth. When you practice this honesty, you teach others how to treat you. Respect is not demanded but modeled. Manipulation loses its power when it meets clear, consistent boundaries enforced without apology. This does not mean cruelty or callousness. It means self-respect and emotional discipline. It means refusing to sacrifice your peace for temporary approval. This discipline is a practice, not a destination. There will be moments of doubt, relapse, and challenge. Manipulators are persistent, skilled at finding cracks in your armor. They exploit moments of weakness, fatigue, or loneliness. But each time you stand firm, you grow stronger.